There is a moment in sport when revenge stops being an emotion and becomes a plan. Not the kind of revenge that burns and screams and shows its teeth. The cold kind, the patient kind, the kind that waits exactly 365 days, crosses an entire ocean, sits down on a starting grid, and then, in less than 4 seconds, settles everything without saying a single word. October 21st, 1990. Suzuka Circuit, Japan. The first corner of the first lap. That is where Ayrton Senna decided that enough was enough. And what he did in that corner is still debated to this very day. Was it justice? Was it ruthlessness? Was it genius? Or was it madness? Before you judge, you need to understand exactly what had been taken from him. Because this story does not start at Suzuka in 1990. It starts at Suzuka in 1989. And it starts with a door that Alain Prost refused to open. If stories like this one speak to something inside you, the kind of history that goes beyond the podiums and the trophies, consider subscribing. Every week, there is a new chapter worth knowing. To understand what Senna carried into Japan in 1990, you need to feel the weight of what happened to him 12 months earlier at that very same circuit. In 1989, Senna and Prost were teammates at McLaren Honda, two of the most gifted drivers of their generation, sharing the fastest car on the grid. In practice, it was one of the most psychologically destructive relationships Formula One had ever produced. The trust between them had collapsed over the course of that season, beginning at Imola, where Prost believed Senna broke a gentleman's agreement, and building through race after race of silence, suspicion, and barely contained hostility. Two men who shared a garage and refused to share anything else. Not a word, not a glance, not a millimeter of asphalt. By the time they arrived at Suzuka in 1989, Prost led the championship by 16 points. Senna had to win. He qualified on pole by 1.7 seconds, a gap that seemed to belong to a different sport. But pole at Suzuka sat on the right side of the track, the dirty side, away from the racing line. Less grip, slower launch. Prost had built his entire race setup around this advantage. At the start, exactly as planned, he rocketed ahead. For lap after lap, Senna pressed, unable to find a way through. Prost was carrying less drag, faster on the straights, nearly impossible to pass. Then, with 6 laps left, Senna dove to the inside of the chicane, front wheels alongside Prost's cockpit. Prost had declared it publicly weeks before, "No way am I going to open the door anymore." He kept his word. The cars touched. Both stopped. Prost climbed out already, knowing he was champion. Senna restarted, won the race on the road, and was then disqualified by the stewards for cutting the chicane. The FIA, under President Jean-Marie Balestre, a Frenchman openly close to Prost, not only upheld the penalty, but added a $100,000 fine and a 6-month suspended ban. Senna called it a manipulation. He threatened to quit. For a time, it genuinely seemed like it might be over. But he came back. And he came back with something different living inside him. 1990. Prost had moved to Ferrari, driving the 641, one of the finest machines Maranello had built in a decade. By Japan, with 1 race remaining after Suzuka, Senna led the championship by 9 points. 9 points with 9 available for a win. If Prost won both remaining races and Senna scored nothing, Prost would be champion. If Prost failed to finish even one of them, Senna was done. The mathematics were brutal, and both men understood them exactly. Then, the weekend before the race, history repeated itself. Senna had been assured before qualifying that pole position would be moved to the left side of the track, the clean side. Because the dirty right side slot had cost him at this very venue for 3 consecutive years, he qualified. He set a time of 1 minute 38 seconds and 4 hundredths, nearly 2 full seconds faster than Prost. And then Balestra intervened. The agreement was reversed. Pole would stay on the right. The dirty side, again. Senna said it plainly that night. He told reporters, if Prost gets ahead into that first corner, he better not turn in, because he is not going to make it. Race day, October 21st, 1990. The morning air at Suzuka carried that cool Japanese autumn sharpness that makes everything feel precise and irreversible. 83,000 people filled the grandstands. The red lights came on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, black. At the moment of release, exactly as Senna had feared, Prost launched first. The Ferrari's tires gripped the clean side with authority. By the time both cars had traveled 150 meters, Prost was marginally ahead, angling toward the first corner. Senna came to the inside. He was in 5th gear. He kept his foot on the throttle. The telemetry would later confirm it. Full throttle. No lift. No hesitation. The McLaren's nose met the rear of the Ferrari. Prost later said the impact was hard enough to feel his rear wing break. Both cars left the track together, sliding into the gravel in a tangle of carbon fiber. 2 World Championship contenders. Gone. First corner. First lap. Less than 4 seconds of racing. Senna climbed out and walked back toward the pit lane. He did not run. He did not look back. He walked at the pace of someone who had just finished something. Behind him, the race continued. The points were counted. Ayrton Senna was world champion for the 2nd time, without crossing a finish line. Prost was incandescent. He said publicly that what Senna did was absolutely disgusting, that he could not believe any driver would risk both their lives on the first lap with the entire field still bunched behind them. Senna stood in front of cameras and called it a racing incident. Said Prost had closed the door. Said there had been no room. That was the official version. For 1 year, the world accepted it. Then came Suzuka again in 1991. Senna had just won his 3rd world championship. Balestra had just lost the FIA presidency to Max Mosley. And in the press conference after that 3rd title, with the old guard finally gone, Senna walked to a microphone and told the truth. He said he had gone into that first corner in 1990 knowing exactly what he was doing. He had told himself the night before, if Prost gets ahead into turn 1, I will go for it, and he better not turn in because he is not going to make it. He said it happened exactly as planned. Later, he called Jackie Stewart and said something even more revealing, that God would not allow him to live with the lie any longer, that his faith demanded the truth, whatever it cost. Prost heard it and said nothing new. He had known for 12 months. The rest of the world was catching up. What makes this story extraordinary is the contradiction at its center. Senna was not a cruel man. Everyone who knew him described the same person: deeply spiritual, intensely private, capable of remarkable generosity and of remarkable ruthlessness in equal measure. He prayed before races. He believed his talent had been given to him by something greater than ambition. And yet here was that same man, sitting in a hotel room the night before a Grand Prix, making a premeditated decision to drive into his rival at racing speed. That contradiction is where the real story lives. Because what Senna did at Suzuka in 1990 was not born from hatred. It was born from a very human belief that the world had broken its own rules first, that the system had cheated before he did, that patience and decency had been repaid with manipulation and political calculation. He was not acting from rage. He was acting from a long, cold, quiet decision. And the most unsettling thing is not that he did it. The most unsettling thing is that when he finally told the truth, the first thing he felt was not guilt. It was relief. The two men did not reconcile quickly. The wound was too deep for that. But sport moves forward, and so did they. By 1993, Prost was at Williams winning his fourth and final championship. Senna was at McLaren, fighting with slower machinery, earning every point the hard way. And at the final race of that season in Adelaide, something happened that no one had scripted. As Prost stood on the top step of the podium for the last time in his career, Senna, who had finished second, reached over and pulled him up beside him. The two men embraced at the top of that podium, not as teammates, not as rivals, as something more complicated and more human than either word can hold. After that race, they began talking regularly about driver safety, about the future of the sport. And then, in May of 1994, at Imola, Ayrton Senna's car left the road at the Tamburello corner at full speed and struck a concrete wall. He was 34 years old. Alain Prost was the one who carried his coffin. Everything that happened between them, the broken agreements, the closed doors, the manipulation, the cold calculation of that October morning, the embrace in Adelaide, the silence, all of it collapses into that single image. The man who closed the door, the man who drove through it anyway, carrying each other at the end into whatever comes after racing. Ayrton Senna won 41 Grands Prix. He took 65 pole positions. He was world champion 3 times. But the number that haunts Formula One is not any of those. It is 4 seconds. The time it took on the first lap of the 1990 Japanese Grand Prix to close an entire chapter of history. Some people call it revenge. Some call it justice. Some call it the coldest and most calculated act the sport has ever seen. What you call it depends entirely on where you were standing when that door closed, and whether you believe that a man who was wronged first is still wrong when he finally stops accepting it. That question has no clean answer, and maybe that is exactly why we are still talking about it.